class of Cauchy sequences, and we have defined addition, and we found that it satisfies all the nice properties, and we could identify the rational numbers plus as a part of this. Okay. So the rational numbers were not lost. That's the first thing that we noticed. But we also had that the rational numbers are a multiplication, and that's what I would like to look at. So we'll next look at multiplication here. Equivalence class of Cauchy sequences. So what do we mean? We have two fellows in here, two equivalence classes, and another equivalence class, both in here. We would like to define what is multiplication of two equivalence classes. As I said last time, a natural way is to bring down all this problem to the representative fellows. So we will just write this as simply multiply the two Cauchy sequences and then take the equivalence class. Now for this, we must make sure this is a good definition. Now what do we mean by make sure that this is a good definition? One, in order to even talk about this, the equivalence class generated by xn yn, you must make sure that xn yn is a Cauchy sequence. Okay, so make sure is xn yn a Cauchy sequence. And the answer is yes, because we have already seen that the product of two Cauchy sequences is a Cauchy sequence. So at least now all the terms there make sense. The next is it independent of the representatives chosen? Is it independent of the representatives chosen? That's the next question. What does that mean? That is, if I had labeled this by some other label, xn prime, that is if xn prime is equivalent to xn, that is if xn is equivalent to xn prime, then I could have chosen xn prime as a representative for this. Similarly, if yn is equivalent to yn prime, then I would have chosen yn prime as a representative for this. Then I would have written xn prime, yn prime here. So will it give me the same class? That is xn yn equivalent to xn y? Then is xn yn equivalent to xn y? If that is so, then the two boxes will be the same. So if I choose any representative for that box, any representative for this box, the product that you get from any of the representatives is going to be the same box, because all these are equivalent. Is that clear? Is the question clear? And the answer is no obvious. Yes. Because we have to show that xn yn minus xn prime yn prime tends to 0. Equivalence means what? The difference goes to 0. We have to show, because, okay, to show this, we need to show xn yn minus xn prime yn prime limit n tending to infinity is equal to 0. That's what is meant by saying these two are equivalent. We say the two sequences are equivalent if the difference goes to 0. Now therefore we have to look at the difference. So xn yn, one of them I suppose will work. Xn yn minus xn prime yn prime. We have to estimate this. This is equal to xn into yn minus yn prime plus yn prime into xn minus xn. I just added xn yn prime and subtracted xn y. Subtracted and added either way. Therefore, the modulus of this will be equal to the modulus of this. And the modulus of the sum is less than or equal to the sum of the moduli. So the two terms can be split. Now product of the modulus is the absolute value of the product. So this is equal to mod xn. Now we are practically done, because since yn is a coefficient, yn is equivalent to yn prime, this can be made small. Since xn is equivalent to xn prime, this can be made small. And these are Cauchy sequences, these are bounded, so they are under control, so everything is okay. So now it follows, now the result follows. Since 1, xn and xn, yn prime are bounded in Cauchy sequences, and 2, xn is equal to xn prime. This makes these two terms bounded, this makes these two terms go to 0, and we are done. Okay, so that's essentially what it is, and therefore this definition is a good definition, though it apparently looks like dependent on how we label these boxes. It is independent of the label. The answer will come out to be the same, whatever label you choose. That's the question. So now, easy to verify. Well, as we go along, the following. 1. Now I want to, the moment we do some, introduce the multiplication in this fellow is identified here. So he is going through a multiplication because of this. Is this the same as the old multiplication? And the answer is yes. The first is, I will just write this, you verify this. If R is identified with R hat, S is identified as S hat, then R plus S is identified, R into S is identified with R into S. This is the simple verification. So therefore, the identification of the rational numbers carries over all your old information. Genetic information is there, it is not lost. Sums are rational numbers are identified, their sums are identified, their products are properly identified. The second thing is, I will just write like this. It takes more time to write and understand these things. It's just the addition is complicated because the I'm sorry, why am I writing addition? I am discussing multiplication. The reason is the definition says this. Now in this I can flip the yn and the x's because product of rational numbers is commutative. So all these are genetic. It comes because it is the rational numbers are inducing this multiplication, and therefore they will be kept. Okay, so therefore into is commutative. Similarly, into in EQ is associative. Same verification will tell you it is associative. And we know that there exists this one hat. What is this one hat? It is the identification of the rational number 1 in this space. What is this one hat? One hat is look at the sequence 1, 1, 1, etc. and look at the equivalence class generated by that. Such that if we now take any equivalence class and multiply it by 1 hat, what do you get? The same equivalence class. Because xn into yns are all 1 now, so it's xn for every xn. So therefore, 1 hat acts as the multiplicative agent. Multiplicative. So therefore, the normal one which was identified as 1 hat in this, that still continues to act as the identity element in the larger universe of this so-called CQ, the equivalence classes. So the next thing is about multiplicative inverses. Now I would like to digress a little bit before I go to multiplicative inverses to make our definition clearly proper and correct. Now I am going to look at, so before multiplicative inverse. Some remarks which will be useful. Okay, so that our definitions are put in formal. Now I want to, one basic thing that one should learn is how to write negation of a particular statement. So now I am going to look at first the statement. Suppose I have a sequence converges to 0. What does that mean? So let us look at this statement. Xn converges to 0. That is xn is equivalent to or whatever it is. Let's say xn converges to 0. Then what does this mean? This is the same as for every epsilon positive, epsilon in Q. Hold on. Our whole universe is now only Q, so we should always remember that epsilon is in Q. For every epsilon positive, epsilon in Q, I am going to leave some space. There exists in epsilon such that n greater than or equal to n epsilon implies mod xn is less than. That is the definitional fact that xn goes to 0. Beyond a certain stage, the things are very close to 0, maybe on the right side or the left side. So therefore we put modulus xn. That will be small. The distance from the origin will be small. Now what is meant by saying then, what is xn does not converge to 0? That's the negation of this statement. So this should not happen. Okay, so now let's see what is the negation of this statement. This statement says for every epsilon something happens. Okay, let us start from the leftmost extreme. For every epsilon something happens. The negation of it is what? For every epsilon something does not happen? No. For some epsilon this does not happen. So if you call this property as P, what this says is for every epsilon P is true. Now the negation of this is for some epsilon P is not true. So there exists a positive. This means there exists a positive number. What positive number? Some positive number. So let's call it as k greater than 0. Okay. One particular epsilon. I will call it as k. Such that P does not happen. Now we have to say what is meant by the negation of P. What is meant by the negation? Not P. P says there exists an n epsilon such that something happens. What is the negation? For every n epsilon this will not happen. Okay? There exists one phenomenon that does not exist one phenomenon. That means for every n epsilon this will not happen. So for every positive integer such that for every positive integer k n, this does not happen. What does this mean? This says this is less than epsilon for every n greater than this. So for some n greater than this, it will still be violated. That is, there exists an n greater than or equal to n such that mod xn is greater than or equal to. That is the negation of convergence to zero. So for every epsilon, some property holds. So for some epsilon, the property does not hold. What is meant by the property does not hold? The property says there exists some n, something is happening. The negation of this is for every n, this does not happen. And that's what it is. For every n, this does not happen. This happens means beyond a certain stage, beyond that stage, everything is smaller than epsilon. This does not happen means however you go beyond that stage, there is somebody who does not become less than epsilon. So this is the negation of the state.
Is that KK?
This is exactly the negation of the convergence state. Okay. So if a sequence does not converge to this, so let's now make it as, write it in some place and keep it. So let's say this is not the result. This is just whatever you want to call it. You want to say observation 1. If xn, I just copy it in one place, does not converge to 0, then there exists k positive, k in Q, such that for every n positive integer, there exists some n. This n will depend on this capital N and of course k. Okay, so let's just write n greater than or equal to n such that mod xn n. This is whatever be the sequence xn. I am not saying whether the sequence xn is Cauchy or not. Take any sequence, if it does not converge to 0, this must happen. Now, what is meant by, suppose in addition it is a Cauchy sequence. Suppose xn does not converge to 0 and is a Cauchy sequence. Suppose it is both. Now does not converge to 0 gives result 1. So this says result 1 holds. Now we have to exploit the fact, we are going to exploit the fact that it is also a Cauchy sequence. Now, Cauchy sequence implies what? The definition. For every epsilon positive, there exists an n epsilon, it's a positive integer, such that n and m greater than or equal to n epsilon implies mod xn minus xn is less than epsilon. This is what is meant by Cauchy sequence. So start with any epsilon you will get a corresponding deliberately writing it in epsilon such that Nm greater than m implies mod xn. Whatever epsilon I start with, I will always get a corresponding n epsilon such that this happens. That is what is meant by something is being a Cauchy sequence. Okay. Now I will decide what epsilon I will start with later, but I just arbitrarily denote it by epsilon now, and I will tell later what epsilon I want to start with, which is the convenient epsilon to start with. So start with any epsilon, you get n epsilon, a number, a positive number. But then by result 1, whatever be the positive number, there will be a fellow corresponding to me with bit k. Okay, so then by result 1, there exists, I will call it mn epsilon. Some instead of this nn, I will call it mn epsilon. One fellow beyond that stage such that modulus of do you agree? Instead of nn, I call it mn, but since an epsilon is also there, I call it mn epsilon k. All this nonsense. But basically, beyond that stage, I can find one fellow who in absolute value beats k. Is that step clear? Now, this is a terrible notation, so I mean too difficult to write. So, for convenience, let's write m equal to mn epsilon. So, what do we get? Therefore, there exists m greater than or equal to n epsilon such that mod xm is greater than. Everybody with me so far? Any questions? So now let's go back to the Cauchiness. The moment I choose n and m greater than or equal to m, this must happen. So in particular, if I choose little m to be capital M, I can substitute here and it will still be valid because capital M is one of the candidates who satisfy the condition it is greater than or equal to n epsilon. So let's call it as in star use m equal to capital M, and that m is certainly greater than or equal to n epsilon. I should write.
Sir,
Yeah.
is it K or epsilon?
Where?
K, such in the last.
This one.
Right.
What it should be to be. One says only k, one particular k. There exists one particular k. Here for any epsilon I start with. This statement is for some k it must happen. I am hanging on to that k. Okay. The result 1 comes from the property 1. Now I am trying to mix property 2 and property 1. In property 2 I can choose any epsilon. Okay. So what do? I use property 2, start with any epsilon, get a number, and for that number there will be somebody beating him, satisfying this problem. Is that clear? Who asked this question? Is that clear now? So what this says is this has nothing to do with epsilon. It says I have a k. It says you toss a coin, put the n anywhere you want. I will find one fellow beyond him which satisfies this problem. Now I have to decide which point I am interested in. I can be interested in any point. And the epsilon says which point you should be interested in. Start with the epsilon, get the n epsilon, then go look at that stage. Beyond that stage there will be one fellow who will be greater than or equal to. Right? That's it. First of all, I will make sure that wherever I go and stand, I will have somebody to my right who satisfies that problem. Then I decide where to go and stand. Now where to go and stand is dictated by the epsilon. The epsilon says you go and stand at this n epsilon. Then once I stand there, I look to my right. pick up that fellow M who will satisfy that property. Okay? Right. Now that's why I am deliberately doing it. These negation statements are important. Right. So therefore we get, if you put that here, now already M is greater than or equal to n epsilon, all I want is n greater than or equal to n epsilon implies mod xn minus mod xm is less than. You see why I am doing all this nonsense? I mean, looks like nonsense. But all this is needed to make sure that things work properly. But you know, this itself is this. If you understand most of these things, I can go back and do this, and you will be able to do many of the estimation real analysis. Okay? The crux of the matter is all these statements and the negations for ever epsilon, for a particular k. How do you mix all these things? If you understand this mixing up process, then you basically can do most of the estimates properly. Right. Now, what does this mean? This means if you choose if you plot minus epsilon and plus epsilon, this xn minus xm, where should it lie? It should be somewhere here. So it simply says minus epsilon less than xn minus xm less than epsilon. Now, what does that say? That says xm minus epsilon is less than xm. I'll take this to this side. I'll use the one for them. I should have said what is my aim, but I am hiding it, but we'll see why. So that says xn is greater than xm minus epsilon for every n greater than or equal to n epsilon. Okay? But okay, I don't want this at the moment. I want one simple thing. Okay, let's look at this. Mod xm. But what I am doing now is we need it for a little later stage. Do you agree with this? We got modulus of mod A minus mod B is less than or equal to mod A minus B. We had one inequality. So this will be less than or equal to this, and this will be less than epsilon for n greater than. So from here I get mod xn is greater than mod xm minus epsilon. You get this step? This is just the inequality that mod A minus mod B less than mod A minus B. And now this part is less than epsilon beyond this stage. And now you take the xn to the one side and the other things to the other side. You get mod xn is greater than mod xm minus epsilon. But what do I know about mod xm? It is greater than or equal to k. So it is greater than or equal to k minus epsilon. So whatever epsilon I choose, so what is the conclusion? Whatever epsilon I choose, beyond a certain stage, the modulus of every term will be greater than or equal to k minus epsilon. Right? Now I choose epsilon to be k by 2. If I choose epsilon to be some k by 2 or k by 3 or k by 100, something smaller than k, so that something is left out when you subtract it from k. Right? What happens then? Mod xn will be greater than or equal to some L, which is itself strictly positive. That means all the terms will be staying away from 0. Minimum distance they will keep from 0. That means they will never be 0. They will all be strictly positive. That's what the main. So that now I can invert. See, eventually I want inversion, I have to write 1 by xn. But I am not very sure whether this xn fellow will go on touching 0 and coming back, touching 0 and coming back, touching 0 and coming back. Now make sure you can never go near 0. I blocked you by this k by 2. You can't go beyond that, so I will get 1 by xn well defined. That is the idea. Okay. So the conclusion is the following. So choose epsilon equal to k by 2, get n epsilon such that n greater than or equal to n epsilon implies mod xn greater than or equal to k. So what is our conclusion? A proposition that we write. Proposition will follow if we have studied subsequences, etc., etc. later. We haven't finished that yet, so it has to be done this way. If xn is a Cauchy sequence of real rational numbers and xn does not converge to 0, then there exists, let's call k by 2 as some L, okay? There exists an L positive such that there exists an L positive and a state such that n greater than n implies mod xn greater than n. That's the right. The terms give a definite distance away from the 0. They are all repelled by 0 by a minimum distance of n. So basically what is meant by convergence? Convergence really means you are attracted as close as you want. Non-convergence means you are kept away at a distance. That's all. That's all this says. The mathematical conclusion of that common sense statement has to be made like this. I'm not converging to you means I am staying away from you. And this is in. You can only make these statements up to this only if it is not a Cauchy. The Cauchiness brings that beyond a certain state they have to keep a minimum distance. Okay.
So can we not choose epsilon to be k itself?
Pardon me?
Can we not choose epsilon to be k itself?
Tell me how can you choose epsilon to be k? It only says mod xn's are greater than 0, but then I want to make sure that they don't convert. What is meant by not converging to 0? I want to specifically see that they are keeping a distance away from the origin. The reason why I want this, you will know why. Okay? Why I want this and why I didn't choose epsilon to be k and enough if it is greater than or equal to 0. But then that equal to 0 will create problem. I can't write 1 by xn. Okay. The second reason you will see later, shortly, very shortly, why I want to be strictly staying away at a positive distance from the origin. Very soon you will see the second reason. Okay. Okay. So now let's go back to the inverse question. So I will wait for a minute. If you have any other direct question, you can answer that before the inverse question. Is that statement clear? What it really says is, if you have a Cauchy sequence and it does not converge to 0, then there is a barrier created around the origin, and if you cut off the head at some stage, then this barrier does not allow anybody to get into that region at all. It's clear cut. It's like if you you kill a finite number of mosquitoes, then the mosquito net protects the origin from all these mosquitoes of the sequence xn. That's all. In the present situation, you need the mosquito nets. That's all it says. The origin is able to erect a mosquito around itself, so that after some stage, no member of the sequence can enter it. So, if it kills a finite number of first few mosquitoes, then it's protected from mosquitoes. Or if the origin's target is only epsilon, then all the members stay away from that target range. Anyway, whichever way you want to look at it. Right. Now, what does this mean? First thing is the following. We will use this immediately in the inverse question. Suppose I have an equivalence class of Cauchy sequences. Then we have the zero equivalence class. What is the zero equivalence class? The equivalence class generated by the zero sequence. It is just the equivalence class generated by this sequence. Then, what is this? It is, by definition, you have to multiply every term of the sequence with this, every term of the sequence, so it will be just 0, 0, 0, which means 0 hat. So, whatever I multiply 0 hat with, I will get 0 hat only. That's what happens even in the rational numbers. Whatever I multiply 0 with, I get 0. So, we have no business to ask for the multiplicative inverse of 0, because we can't multiply by 0 by anything and get 1. Similarly, we can't multiply 0 hat by anything and get 1 hat. So, don't ask for multiplicative inverse for the 0 element. So, 0 hat cannot have multiplicative inverse. Therefore, 0 hat cannot have multiplicative inverse. What do you mean by multiplicative inverse? When multiplied by that, you must get 1. 1 in this case is the 1 hat. So therefore, what about xn inverse of xn not equal to 0? Suppose it's different from this 0. What about it? That's what we would like. Now, natural definition will be that, because when you multiply I get 1, but then I am in trouble, because what if some of the xn's are 0? That's not well defined. So therefore I want to make sure they are all 0. Now what is meant by it is different from 0? That means it is not equivalent to the 0 sequence. That means xn minus 0 does not converge to 0. That means xn does not converge to 0. So xn is a Cauchy sequence, does not converge to 0. I know that after some stage they are all not 0. So therefore this is well defined after some stage. But in a sequence, whatever you do for the head portion, it's not at all bothered. So what you do is the following. Okay. From this, I will choose another label which has all the xn's not 0. Okay. By proposition, okay, let me write that. We have 1. xn does not converge to 0, and 2. xn. This is because xn is not equivalent to 0. That is this condition. This is because everything is Cauchy, generated by Cauchy sequence. Therefore, by proposition 1, we have an L greater than 0, n belonging to n, such that n greater than or equal to n implies mod xn greater than or equal to n. Therefore, I'm sorry, right. Therefore, xn are all not equal to 0 for n greater than or equal to n. That's for sure, because they are staying away from the origin. Now, define a new sequence xn prime to be equal to 1 for 1 less than equal to n less than equal to n minus 1 and xn for n greater than. What I have done is I have done some patchwork at the, I painted off the zeros as ones. If at all there was a 0, I would make it 1. Then what happened? This sequence has all non-zero elements and this is equivalent to xn prime, original sequence, because beyond a certain set they are same in fact. Not only equivalent, beyond a certain set the difference is 0. So clearly xn prime is equivalent to 0. Clearly xn prime not equal to 0 for n, xn prime is equivalent to x. Therefore, the box xn is the same as the box xn prime. Right? And now we can define 1 by xn prime. That's well defined. So we can define our torture is not over yet. These people will keep on bothering us with technical data. At least now it's clear. Why I did all this is to make sure that the 1 by xn makes sense. Now the original 1 by xn may not make sense, but there is an equivalence 1 by xn which will make sense. But it is always it is a good definition. One, namely, first of all, it is a it is a Cauchy sequence. That's not clear. Is that a Cauchy sequence? That is where the second time I used the fact I want to keep them greater than. The way I did not choose epsilon to be k, but k by 2. Okay. That's the reason. Right. Okay. So is that a Cauchy sequence? Only if it's a Cauchy sequence, 1 by xn prime will make sense. That box. Otherwise, it doesn't generate a box. Boxes are generated only by Cauchy sequence. The allowed labels are only Cauchy sequences. So I want to make sure that 1 by xn prime is a Cauchy sequence. Secondly, it is label independent. That is, if there is one more sequence which is equivalent to xn, whose terms are also not 0, that will give another 1 by xn double prime. Will that and this be equivalent? And the answer is yes. So both the things are taken care of and we are. Okay, so is this a good definition? See, we take real numbers for granted in our life, but people have gone through hell to really make these things meaningful, correct mathematically. Keep this, erase this. So, to ascertain that this is a good definition, we have to make sure that make sure of 1 by xn prime is a Cauchy sequence. Of course, all these are rational numbers because xn prime is a rational number, so 1 by xn prime will also be a rational number. 1 by xn prime, this is a Cauchy sequence of rational numbers. And 2, if xn double prime is equivalent to xn and xn double prime not equal to 0 for every n, then 1 by xn prime is equivalent to 1 by xn. And therefore the box generated by this will be the same as the box generated by this. Okay, so what is the procedure to define the inverse? Once you ascertain this, given any box, you are assured there is a label for that box, namely a Cauchy sequence, all the members of which are 0. There may be many such fellows, it doesn't matter, pick one of them. Any one of them you put everybody, flip them. And that will be a new Cauchy sequence, that will generate a box, and that will be the inverse. Now if you say somebody else or pick something else, don't worry, you will also get the same box. You will get the same answer, you will not get a different inverse. So this is what all this fuss is about. Every time you have to make sure that box is well defined, that is what the label you have given is a Cauchy sequence, and secondly that it is label independent. Whatever label you use, you get the same answer. Is that clear? Now, since I thought of giving it as an exercise, but then because he asked that question, now I will demonstrate where that thing is needed. Now let's look at one. What is it that we want to show? That 1 by xn prime is a Cauchy sequence. That is, I want to show that the nth term and the mth term can be made to differ as small as we please. So we have to look at the 1 by the nth term and the mth term and look at the difference. Okay. Now this is equal to xn prime minus xn prime divided by xn prime. Okay. Right. So what happened? That is equal to mod xn prime minus xn prime divided by mod xn prime. There is no problem about this. Why? Because xn prime is a Cauchy sequence. The problem may come from this fellow. I want to make it bounded. If I had made 0 there, they will be going close to 0 and therefore the denominator here will be blowing up. To avoid that, I don't allow them going anywhere near 0 at all. Beyond that stage, the xn's, remember I said xn's are greater than or equal to L for every n. So beyond a certain stage, they remain away from L. Therefore, xn prime greater than or equal to L, for n prime greater than or equal to L, for every n greater than. There exists L and n. This is what we proved. And therefore, since L is positive, I can flip it. 1 by mod xn prime will be less than or equal to 1 by L. And that will make sense. 1 by L will now make sense as a finite quantity because L is not. That is the reason why I did not choose epsilon to be k. Is that clear? Right, okay. And 1 by xm prime is less than 1 by L. So this is less than 1 by L square into mod xm prime. This is a fixed quantity and that goes to 0 and we have that. Okay. Therefore, okay. Now make sure that you got it correctly. This part is exercise. Show that there is a label independent. Now we have gone doing the same thing again and again. By now we must clearly understand what it is meant by label independent. Okay, so what have we got? We have got the multiplication. The multiplication was commutative, the multiplication was associative, and there is this identity element, and every non-zero element has a multiplicating inverse. And then we also have the distributive law, which is fairly straightforward to verify. That is, if we have suppose you have this three equivalence classes and you say A into B plus C. One equivalence class A into equivalence class B plus equivalence class C. First of all, by definition of addition, what is this? This is just yn plus. How did we define addition? We simply define addition by adding the corresponding terms of the generating sequence. Now how did we define multiplication? You have to multiply the terms of this sequence with the terms of that sequence. Now I am happy because now I am doing only rational numbers. Xn is rational, yn is rational, zn is rational, rational multiplication is distributive. So this is xn yn plus xn zn. So this is equal to, again, by addition rule, this is the same as xn yn plus xn z. Why? Because addition means adding corresponding terms of the sequence. Again, by multiplication rule, this is xn yn plus xn. So we have the left distributive law. A into B plus C is A into B plus A. So we have the left distributive. Now by commutativity, the right distributive law automatically follows. Okay. So therefore, we have addition, multiplication. Addition with respect to addition is an abelian group. With respect to multiplication, if you remove the zero, it's an abelian group. Multiplication distributes over addition, and that's precisely what is done by a field. So this forms a field inside which the rational numbers sit as a subfield. The whole identification is there, and therefore we have the theorem that Q plus CQ plus still left equals plus into E is a field in which Q plus into is a sub. Okay. So we have now a bigger field than what we started. We started with the rational numbers, and we are now construct a bigger field in which we have addition, multiplication, everything, and the rational numbers go and sit as a part of that. Okay. But we have not yet come anywhere near the fact that there was a defect in the rationals which we wanted to remove, and that we haven't done yet. But we are still somewhere far off from that. But however, let's go through whatever rationals had first. The rationals had an order greater than, I can say a rational number A is greater than a rational number B. Now that in turn will have to induce an order on this. So that is the next thing that I would like to look at. So the next thing that I want to look at is, okay, this field is called the real number field. This field is called the real number. For every equivalence clause as a is called a real number. So from now on, we will know that's what the real number is. So every real number is not just one number. It is Cauchy sequence. Not only one Cauchy sequence, many Cauchy sequences, equivalence classes. So the next question is the order. I need not write this, because from now on I can write R. Anyway, okay, so what do we mean by that? So we want to have order greater in less or greater. I have just ordered with greater, so I'll stick to greater. It automatically induces less. Right. What is a natural limit? Well, let's look at xn yn in two real numbers, that is two equivalence classes. They are different because we are talking about greater for two distinct elements. I can't say two if they are same. If they are different elements, I will say which one is greater than the other. Say not equal, unequal. Then we may say now first of all, if we first of all push all the problem to the labels, so we must convert it the problem to somehow to the sequences. So if xn is greater than but then what is meant by seeing one sequence is greater than other sequence? That itself we don't know. Well, when do we say that? When can we sort of give a natural definition of one sequence is greater than another sequence?
The difference is positive.
The difference is positive, or every member here is greater than every member there. But then we all know that whenever we have a Cauchy sequence, what matters is the tail. The head is irrelevant. So in other words, every member here is greater than every member there beyond a certain state. That's what we would like to have. Okay, so if that is it, xn greater than yn for every n greater than we will see that is still not fully enough. Not greater than or equal to how much now? But then what may happen is xn will be greater than yn, but every now and then it may come to very close to yn, so the difference is going to 0, some part going towards 0. So that problems will be there, all will be taken care of. But intuitively right now, this should be a good starting point. But then, what is the guarantee that this happens? There may be two sequences which are not equivalent, but every often they keep jumping back and forth. One fellow comes behind you and then overtakes you, then comes behind you, then overtakes you, and then eventually decides to go somewhere else. Why should it happen that given two sequences, beyond a certain stage, a particular order is maintained? And that they are Cauchy. Each is individually Cauchy. But what is the connection between them? So that's not clear at all.
We have to make sure that they are different.
Yes.
And there is after something there is else something like that.
So we have to really therefore look at it very, very carefully. What's happening? So what is really happening therefore is we must make sure that given any two sequences, Cauchy sequences, either they are equivalent, in which case they generate the same box, or not equivalent, in which case the different boxes are generated. But when different boxes are generated, the two sequences are such that some order is maintained beyond a certain stage. That's what we really would like to know. That this must happen always. So what we would like to know is, does this always happen? Given I'll write this, I'll make it more formal, okay, as he said. Little bit more formal. This and whatever idea he had in mind. Given any two Cauchy sequences xn and yn of rational numbers either xn is equivalent to yn, in which case the boxes are the same, the boxes are different, or xn not equivalent to yn and this always happens, and this should imply that either xn greater than yn or yn greater than xn beyond a certain stage. One of these things must happen. The law of trichotomy is what I am trying to say, that it is forced on us. Nothing more than this can happen. So if the first one happens, I say the box xn is the same as the box yn. If the box xn is not equal to the box yn, then this will be true. In that case, if this happens, I will say the box xn is greater than the box yn. If this happens, I will say the box yn is greater than the box xn. And we have complete order. Any two fellows are comparable. Either they are equal or one of them must be greater than the other. That's what we really want. Now, this is what I want to investigate. When xn is not equal to yn, what happens? So that's what we are going to really look at. So what happens when xn is not equal to yn? I'll close this. And then formally write what exactly the correct definition or what happens. Okay, they are Cauchy sequences. All that we are dealing with are Cauchy sequences. What happens when xn is not equivalent to y? What is meant by xn is equivalent to yn? It means limit of the difference is 0. Good. So it's not equivalent means the limit is not 0. So what this means is this implies limit n tending to infinity xn minus yn. Now, proposition 1, if you call this as Zn, if limit Zn is not Cauchy sequence, this is a Cauchy sequence because xn is Cauchy, yn is Cauchy, the difference of Cauchy is Cauchy. So Zn is a Cauchy sequence of rational numbers and Zn does not converge to 0. Therefore, by proposition 1, there is a number L beyond such, and for any stage there is a stage beyond that where that a number L will be produced. So by proposition 1, I am going to essentially do what I did before. By proposition 1, there exists L greater than 0, L in Q, such that for every n in n, there exists an Mn, Mn in n, such that mod x Mn greater than. That's exactly what this is.
Zmn.
Ah, absolutely right. What is Zmn? Xmn minus okay. You will see later that not only the order is maintained, but there is a certain distance that xn will have to keep from yn beyond a certain stage, minimal distance, and that comes out of this n. So xmn minus ymn must be greater than or equal to Now and also, that is first one. Let's call this as some property. Analysis is all about epsilons and deltas. Getting the right epsilons and the right deltas and the right n's in the right places. Right. Okay. Now, I have so far not used the fact that xn and yn are Cauchy sequences fully. Exploited them. So, xn is a Cauchy sequence means what? Beyond a certain stage, the differences can be made less than epsilon. Yn is a Cauchy sequence means beyond a certain stage, the differences can be made less than epsilon. Now, the xn sequence may have some stage beyond which difference becomes epsilon. The yn sequence may have some other stage beyond which, but then if you take the farthest of the two, then both will be less than epsilon. So that's the first thing that I'll observe. Xn and yn are Cauchy. Imply for every epsilon, you can start with any epsilon. Again, I am going to say which epsilon to start with later. At present, I'll keep my options open. For every epsilon, there exists an n epsilon, a positive integer, such that nm greater than or equal to n epsilon implies mod xn minus xm is less than epsilon and mod yn minus 1. Both. Okay. Right. Now, start with any epsilon, you will get a stage. Now, corresponding to that stage, there will be a fellow such that mod xmn minus ymn will be greater than or equal to L epsilon. So, corresponding, start with any epsilon, get n epsilon. For this n epsilon, get mn epsilon such that mod xmn epsilon is greater than or equal to that. Not mod xmn epsilon, mod right? You can, whatever epsilon you start with, you will get an epsilon. Whatever stage you get, corresponding you will get an mn epsilon for that. Is that clear? So now, the word is that clear is called intimidating proof. It has to be clear. There are many proofs. One is hand waving. We sort of, many people do that in the interview. You put this there, put that there. I don't know, that's why I asked. So that's one proof. And then this is the other one. Is that clear? That's the intimidatory proof. You better accept the fact, maybe it should be true, I think about it. Other thing is, of course, it's obvious. That's the most dangerous proof. Anyway, so now there are two possibilities. Either this is greater than this or this is greater than that. So let us look at the case where xm and epsilon is greater than ym. In this case, what this says is xm and epsilon is greater than ym and epsilon plus m. Okay. Let me call this as, there are number of equations. This is 2, this is 3, I don't know which one I use, this is 4. Right. Now let's go back to 3. In 2 I can substitute for little m and epsilon. Why? I have to, whenever I put m greater than or n epsilon, it works. My m and epsilon is greater than or equal to n epsilon. Okay, I should write that. So I can substitute m and epsilon in this. So in 2, use m equal to m and epsilon. To get mod xn minus xm and epsilon is less than epsilon for every n greater than epsilon. Is that clear? Right? Because the 2 is valid whenever I choose n and m beyond the n epsilon stage. So in particular, if I choose m equal to capital M and epsilon, it is already beyond the n epsilon stage, so it must be valid. Now once again, this says minus epsilon xn minus xn and epsilon c. So what does that say? Xn is greater than xm and epsilon plus epsilon or minus right? Any question?
The saying is for all n epsilon belonging to n, for some n comma m belong greater than or equal to n epsilon, xn minus xm is less than epsilon.
No, whenever n and m are greater than n epsilon, whenever n and m are greater than, this has to be valid. N and m greater than or equal to n epsilon, this must be valid. But that's what it is. N m greater than or equal to, what is it say? This, whenever this is satisfied, this is true. If this, if P, then Q. Okay? That's what it is. For all n and m greater than or equal to n epsilon, this is true. In particular, for m equal to m and epsilon, this is true. And I have practically done. This says, this is greater than y m n epsilon because of this plus L minus epsilon. Okay? Now do the same thing with 3. What does 3 say? And therefore, ymn epsilon will be greater than yn minus epsilon, something like that. Yn minus epsilon less than epsilon. So this ymn epsilon is greater than yn minus epsilon. So this is greater than yn minus epsilon plus n minus epsilon. So what have we got? Therefore, xn is greater than yn plus L minus 2 epsilon for every n greater than n epsilon. So beyond a certain state, whatever epsilon you choose, beyond a certain state, this will happen. Now I am going to choose my epsilon as k by 3. If I choose my epsilon by, so choose epsilon k by 3, get n epsilon and xn greater than yn plus L by 3, L minus 2 L by 3 for every n. So what it says is, not only xn will be greater than yn beyond a certain stage, xn will be at a minimum distance of L by 3 after a certain stage. Beyond a certain stage, it will be at a minimum distance of L by 3. And this is, if this happens, what can happen otherwise? The flip. In the flip case, yn will be greater than xn plus L. Can this be equal? They cannot be equal because they are equal, this will become 0. And this is positive. 0 cannot be greater than or equal to a positive one. So they have to be different, and therefore one of them must happen. And so if yn, what did I call it? ymn epsilon. Ymn epsilon is greater than xn epsilon. Then get mod xn yn greater than xn plus L by 3. So what this says is, now we are in good shape. Given any two Cauchy sequences, they have to be either equivalent, or if they are not equivalent, beyond a certain stage, one of them will keep a definite distance, positive distance away from the other. That's what it says. If xn keeps to the right of yn, we say that class xn is greater than the class y. If yn is greater than the xn's, then we say that the class yn. So now it is a good definition. These are the only three possibilities that can take place. Either the two boxes are equal, the two boxes are not equal, this representative and this representative are such that beyond a certain stage, one of them will keep away from the other fellow to the right. And that fellow is called the bigger. Okay? So the conclusion is, yes, still has 10 minutes left. So I will write the conclusion. Now I remove this. The proposition one observation that Cauchy sequence not converging to 0, what it means, are equivalent to 0. If here, or proposition 2, proposition n, I don't know what it is, but if xn and yn are any two sequences, Cauchy sequences of numbers, then exactly one of the following must happen. One, xn is equivalent to yn. Two, there exists a number n positive and integer m such that n greater than equal to n implies xn greater than yn plus 3. 3, there exists L greater than 0, n such that n greater than yn. Now instead of L by 3 I call it n, we call it L1 if you want. Okay, so these are the only three things that can happen. This is the law of trichotomy for Cauchy sequences of rational numbers. If we have two Cauchy sequences of rational numbers, one of these three must necessarily happen. Either first one or the second one or third one. And exactly one of them will happen. There is no question of 1 and 2 will happen, 2 and 3 will happen like that. Exactly one of the following must happen. Okay, if that's the case, then we have the definition of the order. Or unequal. If they are not equal, that means this is ruled out. When will they be equal? The labels must be equal. So this is ruled out. So one of these two things must happen. Then we say xn greater than yn. If 2 happens and yn greater than xn. 3. That's all. That's all. Now the rest. What is the immediate thing you do always after giving a definition? It's a good definition. It should be label independent. In other words, if I choose another two labels, the same property would hold for if xn is equivalent to xn prime. If xn and yn satisfy 2, if xn and yn satisfy 2, and if xn is equivalent to xn prime, yn is equivalent to yn prime, then xn prime and yn prime will satisfy a property similar to 2. There may be a different L1 and a different stage, but the fact of the matter is after some stage they will maintain the same order. So similarly, if xn and yn satisfy 3, the equivalent xn prime and yn prime will satisfy. So this is a good definition. That's what I will write as. This is a good definition. You have to verify that. I will test the exercise. So we have the order, and it's now not difficult to verify that all the standard properties of such an order are satisfied. and we have C, the real number field, to an ordered field for which the rational field is a subfield which is ordered field, not ordered subfield. Okay. And that's at least what the real numbers are. But we have still not looked at the defect. Okay? Now, if you take what is meant by defect, defect in the rational numbers was that there were Cauchy sequences which did not converge to a rational number. Cauchy sequences of rational numbers did not converge to a rational number. Now we will show that any Cauchy, the way we have constructed our R, make sure that any Cauchy sequence of real number will always convert to a real number. What does that mean? You have to take a Cauchy sequence of boxes. Now we have to define that. Now that will have to be defined in terms of the labels. So labels are Cauchy sequence. So we have to look at Cauchy sequence of Cauchy sequences. Okay? But all that is only a question of labeling problem. If you have the right notations, the results will follow almost. There will show that there is always a limit. Okay? I will probably just indicate how that works because it's a messy notation problem, and then we will have the real number field complete in the sense that every Cauchy sequence has a limit, it is ordered field, and everything is nice. All the defects that we were talking about would have been removed. And then I will talk about the topology of the real line, which is where calculus begins. But I think this is the right time to stop.